on litigation, environmental law, and construction law from Chicago, Illinois. We're helping to create the next generation of lawyers with high emotional intelligence through a weekly book club and daily practical posts at facebook.com/lawyerseq. During our book club discussions, we'll do a deep dive into books that will help us develop emotional intelligence skills, specifically think about how we can begin to use those skills in our law practices. I'll be live usually every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Central. Today we're doing it on Thursday because I had a conflict yesterday for this discussion, and it is a discussion. So please liberally use the box below wherever you are to make this a discussion, to ask questions, to comment. Would love to see where everybody's from. And to really have a discussion amongst us. I don't sit here as an expert. On the contrary, I look forward to learning from all of you, and really from the books that we're dealing with, that we're reading. We're all learning together. So I look forward to learning from all of you in the comments today. So let's bring up the slides for today. And so we should be live on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Twitch. That's where the restreaming goes to. So if you're on those platforms, all of your comments get consolidated and I can see them on the platform. So if you're watching, please shoot me a comment just so I can see that the comments are working. Let me know where you're from. And if you're an attorney, if you're not, would love to see you in the comments. If you're on Instagram, I'm going live directly from my phone there. You guys kind of get a behind the scenes look into what happens. So if you're watching live on Instagram, welcome. And for everything, I am at DSY, Attorney DSY, excuse me, at Attorney DSY. So on all of those platforms. So please go ahead and comment, and we can really make this a great book club discussion. So for those of you, if you've never watched a show before or don't know who I am, I graduated in 2003 from DePaul University here in Chicago. I'm senior counsel at Picard and Abramson PC, which is mostly known as a construction law firm based out of New Jersey. Obviously, we have an office here in Chicago. I practice civil litigation, construction law, and environmental law. My mission is I identify and share historically correct knowledge and resources, hopefully in an inspiring and entertaining format to help others meet and exceed goals and standards in every area of their lives. And I do that, of course, with this book club discussion, and then also through a podcast, which is the Lawyer Lifestyle Podcast, where I deal with leadership, marketing, and sales topics for attorneys. Obviously, non-attorneys can get a lot out of that as well, but that's what I do, and that's why I do this book club. So let's go over briefly what we've talked about so far. Of course, we're in the self-management portion of this, and of the emotional intelligence skills. And the book is The Stress Solution by Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, who is a physician out in the United Kingdom. And he has identified 4 areas of our lives where that can give us either, it can make things more stressful or it can make things less stressful. And that's purpose, relationships, body, and mind. And so we've dealt with the purpose discussions. We've talked about things like affirmations. We've talked about reframing, so taking a situation and reframing it into a more positive light. We've talked about gratitude. We've talked about how to schedule your time and how a morning routine really helps with that. We've also talked about how to live more, which is doing things you love, doing things with intent, having a vision, and engaging others through things like volunteer activities. And we've started the relationship discussion. And last week we talked about the sense of touch. And today we're going to talk about nurturing friendships. And then we're going to be later on talking about body and mind. So this is kind of the outline for today's discussion. We're going to talk about some recent news. We're going to talk about a discussion of last week's action item. And then we're going to continue on with the stress solution with another relationship topic, which is nurturing our friendships. So again, with a disclaimer, same disclaimers that we've had throughout. I'm an attorney, I'm not a doctor or a psychologist. So if you're having this is not a replacement for any necessary psychological or medical treatment. And consult a doctor or other medical professional if you're having, depression issues, or if you're severely, stressed out. There are a lot of people that can help you, such as lawyer assistance programs and the like. So I really refer you to those professionals. And then again, as we just go through the touch discussion, just remember that there is such a thing as an inappropriate touch, and you do need consent. So those are some of the things that I wanted to briefly touch on. So let's talk about some recent news. And there were two stories that came out recently regarding stress. One was a Stress in America survey that came out from the American Psychological Association that was released in May. And it talked about that through the years of surveys, this year marked the first significant increase in reported stress since the survey began in 2007. On a 10-point scale, the average stress level is 5.9. For parents younger than 18, it's 6.7. So I guess maybe it's a dumb question to ask as a discussion item, whether whether y'all feel stressed out, because I know I certainly do. Would love to. So on a 10-point scale, where do you think you are on a stress level? Would love to see that in the comments. But with so much stuff going on, not even talking about sort of the recent events of this weekend, and then talking about everything that's going on or went on with COVID, and just being at home and trying to work from home. And then if you're a parent, you are trying to educate your children as well. Trying to keep, now that school is ending, we're all trying to keep our children entertained. So where do you think you are on a 1.1 to 10 scale? 10 being really, really stressed out, and 1 being not, you're really chill, you're not really stressed out at all. For me, I'm probably, I guess it depends from day to day. I'm probably somewhere, at the moment, between probably a 6 or 7. Over the weekend, we had some rioting in our community downtown, actually. I live in Naperville, so it wasn't quite as bad as what we got in downtown Chicago, but it was pretty serious. A lot of windows busted out, some stores were looted. So, for me personally and for my family, I think we were, probably more stressed out than usual. But yeah, and then I was actually downtown today, and downtown Chicago today, and saw some of the sort of aftermath of everything that happened, and it was pretty serious. But on the other hand, looking at it from all perspectives, if we really want to talk, honestly about it, African Americans have been sort of feeling on edge and stressed out for, their own reasons, because of, things like police brutality and racism and prejudice. And so, we don't want to forget that, yeah, there was a lot of property damage, and certainly don't want to condone that. But, African Americans and people of color have been, dealing with, stress and being scared their whole lives. So, my stress is probably should be or now less than what they've faced. But now I'm sort of getting um, now I'm sort of understand at least the stress level. I can't understand what they're going through, obviously, but I get the stress part of it. So then the second part of it. Let me go back to the slideshow here. The second part of it had to do with uh, female associates at law firms. And specifically, there was a study that came out that said women associates' job satisfaction spiked after the pandemic broke out, whereas men's stress levels or job satisfaction, excuse me, remained unchanged. And the results of the survey showed that law firms actually were doing a good job delivering on associates' high expectations for how they would be treated and how well informed they would be. Men have the same concerns, but value these behaviors differently than women associates, resulting in the surge. Women are driving the overall increase in job satisfaction rating with a 12% jump. So I'm sure there's a lot of different reasons why job satisfaction for women would be higher. I'm obviously not a woman, so I can't speak to that. If there are any women watching, I wonder if you could give us tell me in comments why if that is true for you, whether you think you're happier with your job now that you're at home. That very well could be. I know for me, certainly the commute is better because I don't have to go in, although I'm going in about 1 day a week, so that's not too bad. So you don't have to deal with the trains or long commutes or anything of that nature. But yeah, I mean, in terms of my firm, I think my firm has been very transparent. They were very good on messaging, as we started working from home. With everything that happened, and so I was actually personally very satisfied with the way that my firm has been. My management in Chicago has been great. As always, really satisfied with the firm since I joined it. But in terms of dealing with the coronavirus situation, they've been very transparent, and I couldn't really ask for more. The technology has worked out well. I don't know for all of you how the tech has been, but getting emails, getting phone calls, forwarded from the office to here has been pretty seamless. So I've been pretty happy with the way things have gone. But I can imagine, for people who are looking for, more of a balanced life, this is, as good as you can get pretty much in terms of, being able to work from home. So female job satisfaction is up. That's a great thing. And we're all stressed out a little bit more, which I think we can all understand. So let's go back to the slideshow real quick. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about last week's action items. So last week we were talking about sort of how we're all going through a touch starvation with coronavirus and all of that, and how everything is affecting us in that way. And so last week's action item was to just try to overall have just to double or triple the number of touches that you have. And that could be either, one-on-one touch if you have, family members who are in your house. But also there are a lot of different ways that you can improve that as well, including, doing things like participating in more Zoom calls, taking an online class, tons of things that you could do to improve, your touch, even though it may be a digital touch. And so, would love to hear how things went for y'all during the week. For me, the one thing that I really noticed throughout this past week was doing a video Zoom call, because of course we all have the option when you get on a Zoom call to either, show your video or to just do an audio. And I really noticed that you really do connect with people better when you're on a video call. You're able to, interact, very well. You're able to, even though you're interacting through a camera, you can really interact, better. You really can connect with the people better when you're on a video rather than just, being, in the audio format. And so, I've really noticed that. And the one thing that I played around with a little bit this past or 2 weekends ago was sort of the Zoom backgrounds. So, I created a couple of funny ones, one professional one. And when you're using sort of the funny one or the more quirky ones, you really notice that, or the other people really notice. And so it's a good sort of conversation starter. The one that I used a lot was I used a Disney World Zoom background where, essentially they have like a gondola system. So it's called the Skyliner. So it was like you're actually sitting in the Skyliner while you're on the Zoom call. So it was kind of fun, and it was a good conversation starter. You're able to really connect with people, before the call actually officially starts. So I found it really great. Often the one time that I don't think it really works in a great way is if you have, hundreds of people online, and yes, and then I kind of find myself, like, instead of looking at the person who's speaking, I often find myself looking at, some of the other like participants, which for me, it's not helpful to be distracted. So, I understand there's, lots of capabilities on Zoom to bring people in and to do, a lot of other things. But for me, it was a little bit of a distraction. And so that didn't really work as well as sort of the one-on-one, or, maybe 1 to 4 people, Zoom calls. So, I wonder, people watching, if, what your, uh, how Zoom calls have gone for you, if you've noticed yourself being distracted, or if you've noticed, people, that you've been able to connect with people. And of course, the best way to do it is to have those one-on-one in-person discussions, or you go to a conference and you're with a bunch of people, and you're able to network in that fashion. Now we can't do it, so we have to rely on technology and really use it to the best extent that we can. So, all right, so let's move on. So that was last week, and today we're going to continue on with the relationship discussion by talking about why we want to nurture our friendships. Because of course, again, relationships can go either way. They can either be something that can really help you, where if you have a relationship that's going really extremely well, then you notice yourself to be less stressed. If your relationship is, and this can be anybody, your intimate relationship, a friend relationship, family relationships, if they go poorly, then you're going to be more in a stress scenario, right? And so that's why nurturing friendships and nurturing relationships is going to help us, be less stressed out. So let's talk about, why that is. So, and this again, we're going through Dr. Chatterjee's book, The Stress Solution. This is chapter 6, and what he says is that humans are not designed to be alone, right? We evolved to live our lives as individual members of a large supportive group. That, if you think about, when humanity started, we hunted together, we ate together, we sat around a campfire together, we talked together, we told stories, we raised our children and cared for the elderly in these sprawling extended families. And so, remember when we talked about when we first started, this stress solution discussion. It's all about stress is all about information that our brain is getting. So if the brain gets an information that that you're safe, that things are going well, then you're going to be less stressed out, and you go into the thrive state. And so, what Dr. Chatterjee tells us is that when we are around friends, your brain receives information that you're safe and not under threat, and therefore you're in the thrive state. And if you think about it, it's so true because think about the last time you were with a bunch of friends. You were at a party, you were at a family gathering of family members that you enjoy spending time with. And you have a great time. Time passes really quickly. And you're laughing, you're sharing food, you're having great discussions, and you're in that thrive state. You're not stressed out at all, right? No matter what you're doing, if you're playing a game, you're watching movies together, you're just having a great meal. The reason why we're having the discussion today instead of yesterday is that we had this we have a great friend from college whose young oldest son turned 10, and so we did this birthday parade where we got in a car and we drove around the block a couple times, honked our horns, gave him a gift, and yes, we were still did the whole social distancing thing, but after the parade ended, we all got out of the car. We all, enjoyed some fellowship with our friend and with his family. And again, socially distanced. My kids had masks on, so we were all outside. But it was a great time. And, I don't think any of us at that moment felt stressed out at all because we had, friends that we knew and loved together, and we just had a great evening, even though it was maybe 25 minutes, but we all really enjoyed ourselves, and we were in that thrive state. So that's what Dr. Chatterjee is talking about here, that if you think about sort of the way that we've evolved as human beings, certainly that's what we were meant to be. So let's talk about what social isolation does. It's actually toxic to your health. The studies show that people with the fewest social ties are 3 times more likely to die prematurely than those with the most social ties. Being lonely means you're 30% more likely to have a stroke or heart attack. And high social stress is an even bigger factor for dying from a chronic disease than physical activity, alcohol intake, and smoking put together. So really think about that. Think about everything that we're told in terms of, why alcohol is bad for us, why not exercising is bad, why smoking is bad. You put the 3 of those together, and it's still not as big of a chance to get a chronic disease as to if we're in social isolation. That's an amazing statistic to me. The other thing that happens is rejection and isolation actually switch your genes into a more inflammatory state, which over the long term can make your immune system weaker and predispose you to a variety of life-threatening conditions such as type 2 diabetes, depression, and obesity. And so what loneliness does in this social isolation, it provides information to our brains that something is wrong and that we're not safe and that we're in danger. And that puts us into a stress state. So this COVID-19 thing has not been great for us in terms of social isolation. I mean, I luckily I have 4 people, 3 other people in my house, my wife and my kids, and we've been stressed out, but I can't imagine the folks who are not only dealing with the isolation and with the possibility of getting, contracting the disease, but then to have to face it alone. That to me, seems like the worst of all worlds. At least I have, people in my house that I can, rely on and talk to. But yeah, so that's why, I'm glad things are at least a little bit reopening, in Illinois. I had actually last night we went to this party, well, parade, and then, we actually went to eat afterwards, and we sat outside, and the waiter was, wearing a mask, and the bus boys were wearing masks and that sort of thing. But it was nice being outside, seeing people. Definitely, again, more in the thrive state than in the stress state. So, again, the problem is isolation, and there's a rising number of us that are suffering from loneliness, and it's not just the elderly. Actually, there was a study by the Mental Health Foundation that found that 18 to 30-year-olds were more likely to feel lonely than those over the age of 55. So, which, is interesting because, a lot of those 18 to 20 somethings are probably going to college, right? Maybe probably a majority of them, I guess, probably would be. And then, after college, maybe you're on your own, maybe but they feel lonelier than those over 55, which, you're maybe empty nesters or living on your own or what have you. So you can see that there's the problem of isolation affects all of us. And why is that? So, would love to get your comments on this as well. What the causes of that isolation is. Now, what I'm going to say is sort of a summary of what the chapter says, and we have to remember that Dr. Chatterjee is from the UK. So, United Kingdom has a big pub culture, right? I don't know if anyone has been to the UK. If you have, let me know in the comments. But I went there for like a week, and my wife and I spent a lot of time in pubs, and they're everywhere in the UK. Although in the United States, a lot of taverns and that sort of thing. But what he says, Dr. Chatterjee, is that we've actually gone through a major change in how we work and play, and that is because number one, there are actually, according to what he says in the book, less pubs and less churches in the community, and there's actually just a decline generally in community institutions. So if you think about it, maybe taking it to the way that we're dealing with things in America, there certainly is, as I think some studies have shown, less going to church, less interest in large community institutions, and so that plays a big role in social isolation because you're not getting out. Maybe you're watching Netflix at home instead of going to the movie theater, right? And so there has been, I think, a major change in, and certainly if you think about the way that we work, more and more people are now working from home as opposed to going to the office. I mean, certainly now during coronavirus, yes, that's absolutely true. But there's a lot of interest, and there has been, in sort of a working from home culture. A good friend of mine from college, she does all of her work at home, and so she doesn't have any in-person interaction. Now she has a husband and two kids, two of one I think is school age, one is not. So I don't think that she's lonely per se, but definitely getting a different perspective than she would be if she was going to the office every day. Social media has played a big role in isolation. And the one thing that I've seen, and the thing that people have seen, is bullying. So here's a statistic that Dr. Chatterjee gives in his book: is that 25% of respondents admitted making personal remarks to others online that they'd never say if they were standing in front of them in real life. Right? So tell me that would love to you know see your opinion on the subject, but just thinking about the past few days and how everyone's reacted to the murder of George Floyd, the Black Lives Matter movement, the riots that have occurred, everything that's occurred over time, just the vitriol, the personal attacks that have occurred, that people would never say those sorts of things if they were standing right in front of them. And the social media has allowed that to occur. Now, I'm not here to say whether that's good or not. But what I can say is that certainly that contributes to isolation, right? When you're able to sit back and just as a anonymous person, just sit back and just wail on somebody, personally. That contributes to just divisiveness in our culture. It continues anger, and it divides us. Certainly. But I'm not here to say that everything with social media and everything online is bad. Obviously, I'm doing this online show and hoping to build this community. So people can get a sense that sort of we're all in this together and we're all learning together, right? That's really why I'm doing this show, so everyone can feel like we're all together in this community, right? And there are lots of other ways, where social media has really contributed. There are a lot of, like Facebook groups, for example, around certain cultures, certain, interests. Certainly, my wife for a long time was spent time in this online community devoted to a television show. You may have heard of it, called ER. This was, in the 90s, early 2000s. Yeah, I mean, and that community was so tight that she actually met some of these people outside of, the online world, took it into real life and met them. Actually, somebody who, so the group has been closed for many, many years, and she actually just kept ties with them. That we actually met with one of the ladies the last time we were in Arizona, not too long ago. So certainly online communities are something that's great, but there are some drawbacks as well. So you know there are good things and bad things with social media, for sure. But we're going to have to figure out how to do it, right? If we're going to continue and we're going to survive in this COVID crisis deal. The other thing I wanted to talk about was this. Oops. I want to talk about this phone culture. So all of us are on our phones, and what's the problem with that? So Dr. Chatterjee talks about the pub culture, right? And how people used to spend a lot of time in pubs, and yes, and again, he doesn't really talk about alcoholism and how that was bad as well, but he's talking about just more of the community aspect of it, right? But what has sort of taken over the pub culture, at least in the United States? It's something like coffee culture, right? So something like going to Starbucks, ordering, sitting down, and many years ago it would be you'd go to a coffee shop, you sit down, and you'd actually have a conversation maybe with the person sitting next to you, or with the person that you walked in with, right? But that doesn't really happen anymore. If you've been to any Starbucks recently, it's mostly people by themselves, maybe doing work with their headphones in, right? So they're not paying attention to anybody that's going around you. So they might as well just be in there by themselves for all they know or for all they care, because they're listening to their music, or they're watching a movie on their phone or on their computer, or they're doing work, and they're not really worried about anything else. So even though it's like everything else that's going on is background noise. right? And so it's not at all like, like a pub culture environment where, maybe you're watching a game together, or you're, having a conversation about something in the community together. In a coffee shop, pretty much these days, none of that is happening. You're pretty much just one person on your own, and you might as well be there by yourself because you're not paying attention to anybody or really interacting with anyone around you, right? So that's another, I think, contributing factor into some isolation that we're having. So, and then, finally, of course, COVID-19 plays a big part of this because, we're all, at least until recently, all very much, locked in and, told not to go out. You could go for a walk, but, not for too long. You can't interact with people. And, you can't do a lot of things. You can't get your hair cut. Even so much as, so this is from the United Kingdom. In the book, Dr. Chatterjee talks about a minister of loneliness, which I found fascinating, and I didn't really know what he was talking about. But actually, there was a whole campaign, and there is a whole campaign in the United Kingdom that where the government is actually they launched a plan to tackle loneliness during the coronavirus lockdown. And there's this whole like campaign about what you can do. I mean, sort of like what I talked about last week on the show. But oh, and hello to the person on Twitch. Awesome, welcome. Thanks for joining. Um, so yeah, so there's this public campaign on, the United Kingdom to get rid of loneliness because it's really such a big, they see it as such a big, mental health factor. In the United States, we haven't really been talking about it as much. We've been, talking about, how, we're able, thank you to the people on the front lines in terms of, grocery store clerks and nurses and doctors and, providing them with resources. But we haven't really talked about as a society how that's really hurting us. And that could be just generally because, I don't know, it could be that, in our culture, we value individualism. That could be part of it. And so maybe, we don't see it as that big of a problem of a social ill, so to speak. And mental health still has a stigma in the United States. So oftentimes we don't want to talk about it, so that our government may not be talking about it. But in the United Kingdom, they've taken a completely different tact, and they're actually putting a whole like advertising in play, putting money behind the idea that we really need to work on our mental health issues, especially when it comes to isolation and coronavirus. So that I found that to be fascinating. His discussion of what's going on in the United Kingdom. So, again, what are some other factors into why we might not nurture our relationships? Well, one of which is friendships take time. A recent study estimates that it takes 50 hours with somebody to make a casual friend, 90 hours to make an actual, what you would call a friend, and 200 hours to make a close friend. And so with everything that's going on in our lives, maybe we don't want to spend the time that's necessary to really cultivate that relationship, right? If we want to have friends, you got to spend time with them, whether that's, online, in person, going to a movie, going shopping, what have you, right? Now, here's one thing that I found fascinating, and let me go back to the slideshow really quick to show you this. It's harder for guys. So what he talks about is that social isolation really hits guys harder. So men are 4 times more likely than women to commit suicide. and this rate has been linked to a steep drop-off in friendships after the age of 30. Why is that? Dr. Chatterjee says that, well, maybe men don't feel it's socially acceptable to spend time together. That could be it. Or it could just be that, again, we value our individualism. We don't really have time to go out and do other things, and therefore we don't invest that time, which is what we really need to do. This is something that Dr. Chatterjee talks in his book, but women, they're happy to get a group together and go shopping, or go to the movies, or go for a makeover, or for a lot of different things. And guys don't really do that as much. So, and why is that? I don't know, but it does seem harder. And I even see it with my wife. She's able to go out with some friends of hers, and for me, it's harder to do that. To find the time, yes, but to actually say, look, I really should go out with my friend from college, who I haven't seen in a while, or text him or whatever. It's a harder thing, and maybe it's just me personally, or maybe it's because I'm a guy. I don't know. But Dr. Chatterjee says it's harder for guys to maintain those relationships, and as we can see, it's very important that we do so. So now we're going to get to the more solution-oriented part of this episode, where we're going to talk about some ideas to nurture friendships. One is and he says to become a regular somewhere. So again, when he's talking about things like restaurants and clubs and pubs, taverns, things like that. But there's another component to it. Yes, going somewhere on a regular basis, yes, but also having an open, happy demeanor to become connected. And so, there's one thing that is, yeah, you can go somewhere a million times, and if you don't talk to anybody, if you don't have an open, happy demeanor, and you don't want to talk to other people, then you're not going to make friends with anybody. Then you might as well stay home. I mean, I guess you're getting some benefit to, going out and seeing people. But if you're not trying to actively make friends, then it's hard, right? So he talks about how he went into most days of the week and had this plumbing problem, and instead of having just going to the internet and searching up a plumber, he actually just asked the people that were in the coffee shop, hey, what do you know of a guy that can do this plumbing that needs to get done. And so then he was able to use that resource and connect with those people that were there, right? And that's, I think, what we all need to do. Before coronavirus hit, I was going to the gym a lot. And, I noticed that, as I kept going, I kept seeing the same people over and over again. And some of the guys, have, camaraderie, right? They were making friends with each other. I didn't end up, to see that you got to have an attitude of openness. And for a lot of people, that's hard because, we're, inculcated as, small children to not talk to strangers, right? To talk to people who are different. And I think what we need to do is to be open. We need to be more open to people with diverse perspectives. We need to be open to people who are different from us, because they're not in our family relationship, but also or friend relationship, but also because they may look different from us, right? And so, but that's hard because that goes against a lot of what we were taught as kids. But it's so important that we have that we have those relationships. And let's talk about not even the health benefits of it. But let's talk about business real quick, right? So we are all, so if you're lawyers watching this, we're in the business of relationships. Let's face it, yes, we provide legal services, but who do we provide legal services to? People, right? Yes, I mean, some of us represent corporations, limited liability companies, limited partnerships. But at the end of the day, we're really talking to and connecting with a person, whether that's a general counsel or a manager or president of a company or a plant manager, or whoever your contact is. That is the person that we really need to connect to and have that relationship with. And if we don't work on our relationship skills and develop our network, we're never going to get the type of business that we need and want, especially if we're at a law firm. So it's critically important for lawyers, not only just as people, but as business people, to create more relationships, and we can do that by opening ourselves up to new people with diverse perspectives in different areas of our lives. So that's why it's extremely important to follow this advice, not only for the health benefits, absolutely, but also for business development as well. So some ideas of where you can, find people and where you can nurture those relationships. So, of course, there's exercise. So things like, a weekly yoga, Pilates, or other workout class, participating in a walking, running, or cycling group, joining a sports team, a club, or a martial art. So let's talk about, sort of those top three. And if you are involved in any of those things, people in one of those things, one of the things that I do is I, referee hockey on the side. Of course, nowadays, nothing is really going on, although I think practices have started in games, at least I've heard. But one of the things that I do is I referee youth games, yes, but I also referee men's leagues, so and women's leagues as well. And so what you see is there's a lot of bonding between those people, either because they're very competitive, and so they're aiming into winning and rah 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 and that sort of thing. But if you kind of get to the lower levels, and it's more about just having fun, just being out there with your friends, so I skate along the boards sometimes and I listen to some of the discussions. They're not even talking about the game. They're talking about their family. They're talking about where they went on vacation. They're talking about, what they're doing this weekend. What's going on with the Blackhawks or the Cubs. They're not even concerned with what's going on in the game. They're just enjoying time with each other. And so that's what sports really gives you that opportunity to do, is to bond with people over a certain sport. The other thing is talking about martial arts. My son does Taekwondo. He's a third degree black belt, and they're actually there's an adult component to. They get some older folks. I mean, they're not much older than me, honestly. But they started later in life, and so, but they're all in class together. They have a teen and adult class. So no matter whether you're a brand new white belt or if you're a black belt, you can go to this teen and adult class, and you can really see the camaraderie, the friendship that's developed between all of these people who go to this Taekwondo class together, and they encourage each other. They become friends with each other, and I really see that. So doing a sport, if that's something that interests you, especially a team sport, it's something that really can help you to engage this part of your life and to nurture and to make new friends, certainly. So here are some other things that you can do to nurture friendships. You can volunteer. I mean, it's not. I mean, this is not rocket science, right? But these are great things that you can do. Volunteering, and the great thing about volunteering is that you can volunteer for basically any sort of interest that you have, because there are all sorts of clubs and organizations that you can join, and you can volunteer your time to those clubs and organizations. Things that I do, for example, I teach religious education during the school year for kids like mine who go to public school, but they're Catholic. We're Catholics, so they have to go to these outside religious ed classes. So I volunteer to teach those classes, and so I become friends with maybe my co-catechists or other people that I meet at catechism meetings. Right, we have to go to organizational meetings and a lot of other things. My wife was a Girl Scout leader for a couple of years. I was a little late coming onto this broadcast because I had a prior meeting. I'm volunteering my time with my son's high school's chorus parents association. And so I'm going to be developing those relationships and friendships as well. And so now, who knows where it may go, but certainly it's great to have people on your side. And then the more time you spend with them, the more you get to know them, the more they get to know you. And certainly the more that friendship blossoms. Because again, I mean, what did I say? It takes 50 hours to be a casual friend. So you're going to have to put in a lot of time in order to nurture those relationships. So volunteering is something that you certainly can do for a number of organizations. So not only would you feel good, but also feel good in terms of giving of your time, right? But you also feel good because you feel less stressed because you're nurturing those relationships. Some of the other things you could do is you can schedule, Sunday lunches with your neighbors or your family or friends. You can join a book club, such as the one that you're watching right now. But certainly in-person book clubs are great as well. And then you could take classes. So classes or workshops and a passion that you wish to pursue. Things like painting, sculpting, writing, or learning a new language, right? So not only are you going to be learning something in your class, but then the people that are in your class, you're going to be able to develop friendships with, right? And so it's just so important to get out of ourselves and stop our own, self-isolation, and to go out and meet people, because it's important. It's important, again, it's important for our health to get into the thrive state. But then it's also important as lawyers because we want to develop those relationships. And then, of course, because we're in an online book club right now, you can become connected in those online groups. So things like book clubs, take online classes, Facebook groups, and other groups online, and other online communities of various interests. I mean, there are so many ways to meet people online, and I'm not even going to talk about dating apps because I've never done a dating app, and I don't know anything about it except I guess it works for people. But what I'm talking about, other than not talking about dating apps, but I'm talking about, just groups that you can join, where you can join in discussion and you get to know people. If the group is small enough, you might get to know individual group members, and that relationship might grow in real life, right? And so, all of these are great ways to nurture and grow relationships. So, another way to do it here is to make time and to plan, right? Um, so what Dr. Chatterjee says is, obviously there's a difference between those who, friends who live far away and people who live close. He says, well, maybe, if you see people who live far away twice a year, that might be enough. For people who live near you, maybe you'll see them every 2 weeks or once a month. But the point is that you got to schedule the time, you got to make the time, because if you think about it, it's good for your health. It's going to be good for your friend's health. You're developing relationships. They're developing relationships. I think oftentimes we sort of get it into our heads. We have a mindset that, we're just like, we're bothering people, right? Again, like walking into a Starbucks and you see, dozens of people and they all got their headphones in and they're all doing their work and they all seem like in their own world. And you go up to them and you talk to somebody and they're so out of it, right? They're so in their own world. They're like, why are you talking to me? And you just feel weird about taking them out of what they're doing and bothering them. But if we think about, our friends and people that we're close with, we're not bothering them. We're actually helping them by helping them to nurture their relationship with us. And you're helping yourself by nurturing a relationship with them so you can stay in that thrive state, so you can continue to get the health benefits and the business benefits of developing those relationships. So it's extremely important to plan your time, to text people, to plan vacations, to just plan time away, plan time to see each other. It's extremely important. So today's action, this week's action item, I should say, is to do a couple of different things. We all understand that developing and nurturing relationships is something that we absolutely have to do for our health. And so a couple of things that we can do. We can write down the names of your friends or people you want to be closer friends with and make plans. So make that effort to do that. Number two, you want to think about what other friends do you want to make, whether that's because of business or whether because you want to be friends with them, and you really want to have diverse voices and people from a diverse perspective. And then the other thing you want to do is you want to think about where you can become a regular, even in this quarantine environment, and make plans when everything reopens. And I have about a minute left on my Instagram feed, so I want to say thank you for everyone who's joining me on Instagram. But yeah, so Kathy, my wife, is commenting, and she says, I'm definitely that person that will talk to you at Starbucks or in line at the grocery store. So, I mean, and that's what I'm talking about. And I wish I could bring her on to sort of, have this more full discussion. But yeah, and I don't know if it's a man-woman thing or if it's just different personalities. But for me, I almost feel like I'm taking someone's time up and bothering them, in Starbucks or in the grocery store. I feel like people don't want to talk. But some people, like my wife, she'll talk to anybody, right? And so, but it's just something that maybe it's attorneys, it's our personality, a lot of us, to feel that way. So, so this week's action item is to think about your friends, to make plans, to think about where you can become a regular. Even in this quarantine environment. So that could be things like, again, online classes, or now that things are opening up a little bit, where you can, like go on a patio, and, eat dinner and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, so I think that's a really great thing. And, oh, my wife is joining me. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm really enjoying this.
All right. Let me turn the camera on.
Okay.
Real quick. I don't know if they're gonna be able to hear you though. Is the problem. So.
Okay, I'll take an earbud.
Well, it's this microphone.
I'll talk into the microphone then.
There you go.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. So we're talking about your action item.
Yes.
So it's very hard during this COVID-19, right? Because we all have to have masks on, and we use our face as a way of letting people know socially, like, I want to talk to you, I want to be ignored, whatever. I recently had an experience last week where I went to the flower shop. There's a local flower shop. I want to help my local businesses. And, lady walked in and kind of got close to me, and then she apologized right away. Oh, I forgot we have to stand 6 feet apart. And then I just used it as a springboard to have a conversation. Very nice lady. she obviously wanted to talk. She told me about her history with the flower shop and how they'd done her children's weddings, and her history with the lady who had recently passed away who owned the flower shop. And it was just a very nice conversation. And I think if I saw her again, I'd easily be able to talk to her again. So I think don't be afraid to try to have those conversations even during this COVID experience. Use your eyes the way you would have used a smile, maybe, so people see that you're open. And everybody's tense right now. Everybody's looking at everybody like, should I be social? Should I not be social? Be social. I think everybody wants to be acknowledged as a human. That's what I think.
Yeah, no, that's good. And one of the things that I saw today, actually, I don't know if you saw. Oh, you're not on my Twitter.
No, I don't have this Twitter.
But so it was. I think it was Universal Studios that in a shop they had, or maybe it was in a mall. I forget exactly what the context was, but so everyone has a mask on. It was at a real retail location, and they actually had a button that showed them without a mask on with a smiling
That's a really
face
cool idea for
that
marketing, yeah.
that showed, like, yeah, I'm sort of open. Now, I'm not suggesting that everyone, wear a button, but that's an idea that can help. If you're in a retail location, you're trying to reach out to people, that might be one way to do
And
it.
I know they already do this in hospitals anyways, but I did hear somebody recently saying that in the hospitals, they're moving their badges that used to hang around their neck higher up so that when you come in contact with someone, when the hospital's already a tense place, you can see that the person behind the mask, this is who they are. This is what they look like you said, with a smile on their face.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a cool idea.
So since you're here,
Yes.
and wants to be on the show, which is good. So what do you think about the difference between men and women in terms of developing friendships? And I think this is mostly a question for people who are over a certain age, so like over the age of 30, because
Right.
when like when you're a kid, you're sort of you have to go to school,
Right.
so you're sort of
We
forced.
teach children to socialize.
Yeah,
As a teacher, I will say we teach children to socialize. We don't teach girls to socialize one way and boys to socialize the other way. We just kind of teach children in an academic sense how to socialize. And when you become an adult, either you got it or you don't.
well, but here's the question. I mean, do you think that there's a difference in the way in terms of gender for, like, do you guys have a harder time developing a relationship over a certain age than it is for women to do it?
Yeah, I think men do. I think that society expects women to be more outgoing and more chatty and more down to earth, and I think men are expected to be more professional. Not like professional necessarily, but men are expected to be more, I don't know, serious. I think that it sort of startles us when men are let their guard down so much. Women are supposed to stereotypically be more welcoming, and I just think a lot of women fall into that. Now, we all know there are men that are very outgoing. You mentioned our good friend from college a while ago. He's more outgoing than any woman. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a gender. I do think women are expected to be the ones in relationships and the ones in society that are more social. I mean, definitely when you go to an event, and you and I go to a lot where it's couples, for your work or just for adult things that we do, with group things for the kids or whatever, I feel like I'm usually the one that has to start the conversation.
Yeah.
I just feel like I'm the one that's expected to be more social. And I think it's become that way. Like, we'll go to something and we'll see people and they'll come to me first that we already know before they'll come to you because they know I'm going to right away jump in on the conversation. You get there, but I think I'm more likely to start it.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a gender thing. I don't know why, but it is.
I mean, do you think that's just like my personality, or you think it's like a guy thing?
I think part of it is personality to a degree, but I just think in general, like for us personally, I'm more outgoing in that respect. Like I told you, I will literally talk to anybody. And I know sometimes it embarrasses my children. I think it embarrasses you sometimes. I get bored and I don't like silence, so I have a tendency to talk to people for that reason, but I also find people very interesting. And people always tease me that, like, people will tell me anything. Like, I can meet somebody, and you were talking about that 50 hours. I think I can do it in like 25. I mean, really, like when I do theater and I meet the other cast members, I have a tendency to make friends with them very quickly because I say, oh, tell me this, tell me that. Do you have kids, or what do you do when you're not in theater? And people have a tendency to open up to me very quickly because I'm genuinely intrigued or interested. I don't know if men are that interested in other people's lives. I don't know. And like I said, all I can talk about is our dynamic. I am definitely more of the outgoing, I'm going to talk to a stranger. You are very social, but you have to feel like you have tested the waters and you know the person and you're comfortable. Then you're very social. But you're very unlikely to start talking to people in Starbucks.
Well, no, and I think, for me, it is because for most of the time when I'm going to Starbucks, I'm going there for a reason. I'm going there to work.
Yeah.
I mean, rarely do I go into Starbucks because I want a coffee.
And again, I know it's kind of stereotypical, but I think about back to when the kids were little, and I think about the library. And you go to the library because you want quiet to get work done. And when the kids are little, I'd go to the library and they'd run around the kids section or sit in the kids section to read. I would strike up a conversation with whatever adult was closest, the parents, a dad, a mom, or even like a babysitter or something. Because I was going for the social interaction. Not that I don't go to the library to read, but usually if I go, it's for social reasons.
Yeah.
So I think there's that.
So, you talked about doing theater, and I don't know how much of the show that you were watching, but I talked about things like joining a sports team or taekwondo and that sort of thing. What other things have you seen that people get involved in that they can really nurture friendships?
I mean, I think you hit the really big ones with adult sports. Like, people we play sports when we're kids. Most of us knowing we're never going to grow up and be professional athletes. But why do we then stop playing them? Of course, things like time. But I think sports was a really good one. I don't think I ever would have seen myself doing community theater. I'm not particularly talented at singing, dancing, or acting. But I think that's a great one. I meet people from all sorts of different backgrounds. Everyone is nice. I really enjoy doing the theater, and I think that's something that's cool. If you don't feel comfortable being on stage or singing or acting or dancing, there are so many behind the scene things too. There's the whole crew. You can do makeup, hair, costume, tech stuff. So I think theater's awesome. And because our kids are into it, it's a cool way to be around our kids. But honestly, when the shows really get going, I'm usually not even around our kids because they're doing they're good and they're in the front on stage doing stuff, and I'm in the back with my friends that I've made. So, but yeah, I think theater's a good one. I think it's a common interest thing, like you said. Book clubs are amazing, and most people I know who end up doing book clubs, they talk less about the book, and then becomes more about how things are, how things are doing. I really think you're right with the finding the common bond. Like, what is your interest? And then find somebody or some group that's into that. Because it's always more fun to do what you like when you're doing it with other people. I think that's why those like painting and wine sipping places are so popular, because anybody can sit at home and paint. It is fun. And you can have a teacher and you can watch reruns of Bob Ross on TV, or you can drag a friend or drag a group of friends. And I think that's why, people do it.
Yeah, we I think I mentioned this before. We did the Mother's Day painting class, and it was better than I thought it was going to be. It was easier once you sort of got into it than I thought it was going to be, and so I'm sure alcohol would have helped as well. And no, you don't think so?
I have fun doing it without drinking. But I like to paint. I could see if I wasn't into painting, but I wanted to hang out with my friends where the alcohol would come in handy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you hit a lot of good ones. I like the running club idea, biking clubs. You see a lot of those. I do notice though, and again, we keep bringing up the gender difference, but I notice men like to bike. I'll notice a group of 4 to 6 guys in our neighborhood at times, and they have the professional street bikes and they're wearing the professional gear, and you can tell they're long distance bikers, but bike riders, not motorcycles, but bikes. You can tell though it's not a social thing. Same thing with golfing. I don't golf and I'm not a guy, but I feel like most men golf so they don't have to talk to each other. I mean, my dad, I went golfing with him once, and he kept telling me, you don't talk. And I kept trying to, talk. And he's like, no, we don't talk when we golf.
Well, I mean, you have to be quiet when I guess someone is taking a shot. But but I've been, I don't really play anymore, but when I played in high school, with my friends, to me, it was more just like a screw around time, just having
Yeah.
fun with your friends than it was competitive. Because, I mean, like my best friend in high school, he knew how to play golf, but the rest
Yeah.
of us really didn't. We were just hockey players who just knew how to hit a ball. That was about it. So,
Right. Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. And I think too, I mean, you can have a relationship without having constant deep conversation. And I think that's the thing. Like stereotypically, I don't think men feel the need to unburden every time they're with each other or, talk about stuff maybe on the same level that stereotypically we expect women to. And I think it's less maybe about the depth of the conversation and more about the relationship and that you're having that camaraderie, that you're enjoying yourself when you're with those people.
yeah.
So that's what I think.
All right. Very good. Do you want,
Hard-hitting interview.
what's that?
It's a hard-hitting interview.
It's a hard hitting interview. Well, I wasn't expecting to have a hard hitting interview. Last question.
Yes.
So since you're here and I'm, in an interview mode, how are you dealing with um, uh, the quarantine situation in terms of, not, I mean, you're a teacher, and so you'd be going out to school and teaching. You would be, driving the kids around to various activities and seeing, mostly moms who are
Right.
doing the same thing. And how has that dynamic or that situation changed? And do you see just sort of a difference between, I mean, maybe it's an obvious question, but just the isolation as opposed to, being able to be gregarious?
Yeah. Um, at first, I liked it because we were such a busy family, and we always had the kind of schedule where I would look at it and be like, "How are we going to get all this done in one night or 1 week or whatever?" So it was nice to going from like never having a free moment on the calendar to all of a sudden having all this free time and getting to spend it with each other. And I still like that part a lot. I actually really like. I don't know how the kids feel about it anymore, but I like having all this time together and with the four of us. I actually really think that's pretty good. And for the most part, I think we get along. We're able to do things together without wanting to strangle each other. And then, like I've said before, the house is big enough, so if people need time out or their own space, it's there. It has been hard socially though, because like at work, you have your routine, you have your people you see, your people you talk to, and it's weird not having those people around. Like I miss just BSing, just like conversation about nothing. And I think you mentioned it too. Like, there's something about going to a movie, there's something about just knowing that, like, before this happened, one of the ladies I work with, like, we were going to meet up at a restaurant right down the street because another person we work with bartends. And we were going to go there one night when he was bartending and have a drink and have dinner, like, literally. And then this happened, and we were like, well, maybe we'll go the next day. We just got sent into quarantine, and then they closed restaurants. And all of a sudden it was like, you can't even go meet up with a friend. It's something you take for granted until something like this happens. And as far as like my really good friends, the people I see a lot, or the people I see every day, I mean, text messaging has helped, but it's not the same. And I definitely, like, I feel bad for you guys because I'm chatty, and I think sometimes I'm like, I'm just going to talk to myself over here because I need to talk. But
I haven't noticed you talking to yourself, but one of the things that we talked about last week was, there was a study that said it's about doing an online like video chat
yeah,
is about 80% effective as as an in-person
I don't even think it's that
meeting.
high. I don't even think it's that high. The few times I've had Zoom meetings where it was a social one, like we would do group Zoom meetings just to check in on all the coworkers, it everybody's like, "Do I start? Do you talk? When do we talk?" And it's funny because you can all be standing together in a group physically, and nobody is unsure of when to talk. But when you're looking at those screens, it's either that weird silence where everyone's waiting for the next person to go, or you're all talking all over each other. Something about that screen, I think, really takes away from the human aspect. So for me, I put it closer to like a 50, 60%. It is not satisfying enough. I'm also a toucher, and that sounds really inappropriate, but I mean, like, I am that person who's going to put my hand on your shoulder. If you make me laugh, I'm going to do that. You know, one of my friends I work with sent me a text just randomly, and she goes, "I miss your hugs." Like, again, I know it sounds kind of weird, but I'm a toucher. So it's like, not everybody likes to be touched, and you learn that with your friends, like who likes a pat on the back and who doesn't. But it's hard. Like, it feels like there's a human component missing. I'm not going to touch the screen. That's just weird.
Yeah.
So
well, and to me, it makes a difference too if you're in a large group doing a Zoom as opposed to doing, like, we had that 4 or 5 person Zoom call that we did just before this, and that it didn't seem awkward, but it wasn't. Yeah,
it's still not the same.
No. It's not the same. Agreed. Okay, and then the other thing, since you're here, is the online community aspect of it.
Yeah, I heard you talking about that.
So tell us about your ER community.
That was like a really dorky thing to do, and it was one of those things where it was like, you read all that stuff about catfishing, and you read stuff about people who pretend to be somebody else. So in the beginning, when we all sort of found each other through this forum, it was just typing. You had your name, and we didn't even have our real names. And then slowly, as we got to know each other, you could always DM and do and PM and whatever the M's are. And
what service was it? Do you know?
It's called TV.com, but I don't even know if it exists anymore.
Okay.
And they had just pages based on like the TV shows you liked.
Got it.
And I originally just went on there. I remember I went on there because I was looking for spoilers of what was going to happen for an upcoming episode, because an episode was left with a cliffhanger, and I could not take it. And not only did I find spoilers, but then I also found like a forum where people were chatting. And so I just jumped in, and there were different threads on different topics, and there was just general threads that I started to get involved in. And then, little by little, as you get comfortable with people, you kind of let your guard down a little bit. And then we kind of, the show ended, so that was one thing. So there really was no reason to go to the forum. And then they made some changes to the website. We weren't all that thrilled with it. So somebody started something new. I want to say Yahoo or something. This predates Google, really. And so those of us that had become close with each other just went and started our own group over there. It was a closed group. I think there was less than 20 of us. But by that time, you were sending messages privately where you knew each other's names. We were comfortable posting pictures of our kids. So it's I would say, I don't think it ever got more than 20. Most of them I only talk to now through Facebook. But like you said, I mean, if we go somewhere and one of my friends lives there, they almost always say, "Oh, you're coming to my town, or you're coming 45 minutes from where I live, we'll go out to dinner." And you've met pretty much everyone I've met. None of them have been serial killers. So we've done pretty good.
Not that we know of.
Not that we know of. I mean, we've met some pretty safe ones, I think. It's so funny thing that you say that, because after we got back from Arizona, meeting my one friend, and of course, we both posted on Facebook pictures of hanging out with each other. And one of the guys goes, "I think Kathy has the record for meeting the most of us." They're like, "Kathy has met so many of us." And I just got lucky that time we went to England that I think I knocked off like 3 or 4 from in one trip, because one person came all the way from Belgium while we were in London, which apparently seems far to us, but it's just a short train ride. Another friend was nice enough to take us around the Windsor area and where she lives in England, and I hopped a train and went up north to visit another one who I already knew. Like, I had already met her once. She had come to visit us. So we knew it was safe for me to get on the train and head 3 hours north.
Yeah, she stayed with us for 2 weeks?
A week and a half, I think, yeah. She was younger, though, so she was almost like having an exchange student. Yeah. At that time, I think she had just finished high school. So, but, yeah, I mean, that's a cool thing I never expected to happen. And it definitely, when you kept talking about like 50 hours and stuff like that, I try to think about it that way. It took a long time. When you can't see a person, when you aren't able to hear the tone of their voice, it definitely takes you a lot longer to form that relationship. We did do things like the early Skype and stuff like that. A lot of us would do in small groups or one-on-one, and that helps. But still, there is a big difference between making friends with somebody online first versus making friends with them in the real world. And I would say it's amazing, and I have some great relationships from it, but be very cautious. I think a lot of people are crazy, so they are. I mean, we got lucky that our group isn't crazy, but
yeah, very true.
Or maybe we're crazy to other people, but we're not crazy to ourselves.
Well, yes. Well, you were devoted to the ER, so.
Yeah, we did. That was our common thing, as we were really into that show. And I think that's the thing, too. What a lot of us found out was because we liked that show, we had other things that we were interested in. because we were interested in medicine. None of us were in the medical field, but we were interested in medicine, and we were interested in the relationships that were on the show, and the kind of it was a good show for doing in the news kind of stories. And so we were like into that stuff. So it wasn't just that, hey, we like this TV show. It's just that we had other interests around it. That's why.
Well, and that's the nice thing about the advent of the internet and social media is that you sort of, a lot of people think they're isolated because they like a certain show, or they like a certain
fandom for everything.
Right.
There's literally a fandom for everything. You're right.
And you find that out much more online with these communities that crop up.
Yeah. And I just thought of another thing too. Like, my dad likes to do fantasy baseball leagues, and I know you do a fantasy football and baseball.
Yeah.
My dad loves fantasy baseball. He's done multiple leagues at one time. He's done these ones where it's like the throwback, you use the retired old players. He is old school, and he always just signs up for a company. And so then you just do these drafts. You don't know anybody. He's actually made friends through that, just from calling people to do trades, or, contacting people for trades, or whatever it comes down to. But even something like that, a shared love for a sport in that kind of a respect, you can get friendships out of. A lot of people, obviously, when they do fantasy stuff, they know who their fantasy baseball friends are, or their fantasy football friends are, but you don't have to do it that way. It's bigger now. When my dad first started it, it was all by telephone, and it was, yeah. Telephone. Yeah. You just call in the person and be like, hey, do you want to make this trade? And yeah, I did a fantasy hockey league one year, and it was before, the internet was there, but you didn't really use that. So, it was email and phone, and it was fun. I met a really nice guy that was out in Cleveland. I learned all about the Cleveland Browns. I didn't know anything about the Cleveland Browns, and he tried to talk me into doing fantasy football, and I said, not for your life. But because that was the early 90s and the Bears were no good.
Yeah.
I could care less. But yeah, so that was something cool that happened. So.
Nice.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No.
Okay. Very cool.
Sorry to crash.
No. It's good. I'm sure people appreciate a different perspective.
They had to listen faster now because I talk. They have to listen faster because I talk way faster.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's for sure. Okay, so we're gonna wrap up. Remember, emotional intelligence is necessary for all lawyers, and we can learn these skills together. And I appreciate everyone joining in. We will see you next week. Next week, we should be at our normal Wednesday at 7 p.m. Central Time. And have a good night.
Good night.